Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday here on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Eric. This week we are talking about science in magic. Today's question is from Mike Penn 0287, and he asked us, are there any good places to look for the science behind the practices of paganism? I mean, are there any studies in the different techniques as to which work better under what circumstances, matching the elemental type to the person, or how the different energies interact? Better visualization ideas for better use of energy or for healing? Maybe there is a name for that sort of thing. I have great interest in comparing my findings with other ideas. The only thing I can think of is on that question specifically is two different web searches that I tried worked out pretty well in the idea of what some of the results I found in my web searches, and one of which is magic and or occult magic science. When I put those three words in, it gave me a lot better results. So it was one of the things that I was happy that I was able to find that. The second of which is occult magic synergies. And that one gave me a little bit more of other people's experiences, blogs and the like, of other people's experiences, none of which are scientific products, but they are the closest thing I came to most of what was going on with those questions in specific, is kind of how things work a little bit. His second question is also curious if you have ever heard anything with spirit guides sharing their energy with you. By that I mean spirit guide jumped into me and felt unique merging of energy. I've spent years on this one. Sorry to double post. Anyway, as for that, it's one of those things where the first question and the second question kind of work for me by answering simply as the best reference material you can find is in your head and in your own experience. It's one of those things where oftentimes experiences, when it comes to spirituality and what most people in the community call magic, something that you have to experience for yourself. You can use any and all references and try it for yourself. And if it works for you, awesome. And if it doesn't work for you, try something different. But there are a few things specifically when talking about science in magic and what magic is as opposed to science, or where they kind of blend. It's I took a bunch of notes. These are bullet points for me to discuss, so I don't know if this is going to be a much longer video, but experimentation in ritual and in practices that you do, that's something that you have to do for yourself. Somebody else can have written it and say, oh yeah, this totally works all the time forever. That doesn't make it work all the time forever for everyone. It's something that you have to experience. That intrinsic evidence that this practice works is not necessarily intrinsic. A lot of times it's empirical. It is by your experience alone. So one of the things that I talk about oftentimes around the circles of friends that I have in the pagan community is personal gnosis versus common understanding. Now, personal gnosis and common gnosis are terms that we use. It's just, I've tried it, it works, it's the way it is. When something is commonly understood and accepted, it's general gnosis. Everybody has experienced this. There's no reason for this to have worked, but that gnosis, that general gnosis, has become something that is widely accepted. Personal gnosis is something like a connection with an element that nobody else experiences, but since it is something that you have experienced and you continue to experience, that's something that is a truth for you, that is not a fact for everyone else, or even a truth for everyone else. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how magic works kind of on a scientific basis without being actually scientific about it. One of the things that I have experienced in my life is when you do drawing magic or attraction magic or the laws of attraction or whatever you want to call it, where you put the energy out, you make the conscious decision and try to make it so the world around you recognizes what you want. Whatever it is that you want has a tendency to come to you a little more easily or a little more effectively than the way that you have, experienced it in the past. Well, I don't know if that has anything to do with energy. A lot of people will say, yes, that's what it is. And we don't have a better explanation for it than my will affects the world around me. So one of the things that I find to be a magic of sorts is the magic of intent. And intent is a big thing. Well, that changes everything you do, from the way you act, the way you interact with people, the way you talk, the way you experience things, the way you perceive the world changes the world. So that's one of the things that science has yet to explain, and maybe someday they will. And that's another thing that I definitely want to talk about, is the fact that a lot of the things that used to be considered magic are not so much they're not so much magic. It's just that they're not explained by science as of yet, because nobody has looked into it or nobody can explain it. Way back in the Dark Ages, and even since then, many things that used to be considered magic, including herbalism and alchemy and the psychology, those things were considered magic because people didn't understand and had no way to explain them. Since then, many studies have been done, and many extensive research studies have been done to understand why that is, and why certain things happen when certain criteria are met. That makes it, hard, fast, current, modern science. So a lot of things, and I think that's going to continue to happen, especially with things like intent and will, and changing the world around us simply by being present and having ourselves be part of it. One of the things I wanted to mention is simply the fact that in many scientific papers and many research projects, observing a subject changes the subject's behavior. Simply by looking at something, it changes the way it behaves. And that's one of those things that there's no scientific evidence as to why that happens, but we do know for a fact that most of the time, maybe not all the time, but most of the time, the action of observing a subject changes the way it acts and the way it functions and the way it interacts with the world around it. A really good example that most people are rather familiar with is, as soon as you turn a camera on someone, more often than not, if not all the time, their behavior changes because they're on camera. It's one of those things where it's just a little note that most people, they ignore. But if there is a camera in the room, as soon as it turns to someone, their behavior changes. Whether they get quiet or they get loud and boisterous, or they come toward the camera, and most people's behavior changes in some form or another when they know they are being filmed. Another one of the things I wanted to talk about really quick is divination magic, and I want to talk about this. I'm not going to get to all of the parts of this, but I find this really interesting, and that is my personal belief on what divination magic is, or what divination is and is not. I don't believe that divination is specifically magical. Okay? Whether you call it connecting to the ether or the gods or a higher power, that's fine. I totally believe that something like that happens, and I'm connecting to an energy or to some source of information that I don't have regular access to. It's not something that I'm with all the time. But what I believe is the symbols of the source of divination, whether that be, astrological, tarot, runes, I Ching, whatever it is, that source of divination and the symbols are open to interpretation, and the reader, being the one who interprets those symbols, has a need to take the symbol and interpret it into a life experience thing. It's not magic, it's logic plus the human experience, the common human experience, plus kind of a deductive reasoning of this is what the symbol says has been happening. This is what the symbol says you could have happen. Where you're at now, as opposed to where you want to be, this is the steps that you have to take. So it's advice, it's deductive reasoning, it's logic, it's the common human experience. All of those things are some sort of scientific or tangible experience that people have had. And I just wanted to kind of put that idea out there to make you guys think, oh, yeah, that could totally be, or no, that's totally not it. But something for you to think about is when it comes to symbol divination makes it very, very easy for somebody who is extraordinarily logically minded to interpret the symbols into advice through the common human experience, using logic as kind of a basis for the interpretation. So, moving on to the last part about the spirit guide, answering him and having it feeling unique, a unique energy source type something. I haven't experienced that, but there are a lot of things that I haven't experienced. What I would probably say with that, in a scientifically, strictly scientifically speaking mind, would be that a rapid change in your perception or your perspective, or allowing yourself to be more open-minded. And by open-minded, that could mean anything from accepting that a different perspective is being seen, or even so far as allowing your mind to be affected directly by the mind of another. Definitely gave you an experience that I would hold on to and cherish. So, congratulations, and a little bit jealous myself. But if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post those in the comments section below. Again, thank you all for watching, and of course, until next time, Odin be with you.